Welcome to Escapists Anonymous, the fantasy fiction book club. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sam. This is a podcast for people who love to read and who read to escape into worlds of magic and adventure. But don't let that adventure end when you finish your book.
Join us on Escapists Anonymous to carry on the conversation.
All right, welcome everybody. A new episode, and we're going to try something a little bit different. We've previously done trilogies in the past. We've done, The Lovely God Killer. We did the Library trilogy by Mark Lawrence. And we've kind of sometimes had to catch up or wait for books to come out. But now we thought we'd do a whole trilogy where all of them are out, and we could just do them consecutively, episode after episode. So you can, again, commit and read along. The first one is Jade City. So it's the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. So it's going to be the first one, Jade City, then Jade War, and then Jade Legacy over the next 3 episodes. I'm excited to get into this because it's quite nice to have this kind of defined project.
Yeah, and it's quite a well-known trilogy. It's been on my list to read for a really, really long time. The concept of it sounded pretty cool, which obviously I think we'll probably get into with a blurb. But yeah, I've just looked at this a long time ago and thought, that sounds like something that could be really, really interesting.
So the first book was 2017, then 2019, then I think 21, 22.
Yeah.
Third one came out. I mean, again, my lack of current fantasy knowledge, hadn't heard of it, but when you recommended it, I thought, sounds like a really good idea. Especially because, we started quite a few trilogies and, only really continued with the books that really, grabbed us. And so there's a bunch of trilogies or duologies we're never going to go back to, potentially, because, we've moved on and they weren't good enough. Whereas this one, we've heard good things about the whole trilogy. So, it's that idea of, right, we're committing to do all 3, which... Spoilers, based on the first one, I'm quite happy we've chosen to do this.
Yeah. Could have worked out really badly for us.
Could have been horrible.
I mean, I guess we probably could have changed our mind before recording if we really wanted to. But yeah, we're committed now. So we've said it. We've said it out loud.
So, as you mentioned, the blurb. I hadn't read this actually, so I'm going to be interested to see. Let's reflect upon this. Okay. Family is duty, magic is power, honour is everything. For centuries, honourable Greenbone warriors have used magical jade to enhance their abilities and defend the island of Kekon from foreign invasion. Now the war is over and a new generation vies for control of Kekon's bustling capital city. 4 siblings of the powerful Call family must prepare for battle, and the fragile peace between the clans is about to break. Now, Kekon, what is it on the audiobook?
Kekon.
Kekon?
Kekon. I guess they say Kekonese.
Yeah. Kekon.
But they kind of say Kekon when they're just talking about the place.
I think that blurb is fairly concise and doesn't give a huge amount away. It kind of sets up the premise of how the world works.
Did you say 4 siblings?
Yeah, because Andon.
So they've included Andon as a sibling.
They probably don't want to get into the details of...
3 siblings and their cousin who's kind of...
and they treat him like one, but he's not really. But anyway, his mum's... Anyway, we haven't got enough space on the blurb.
It doesn't matter.
4 siblings makes sense for a concise blurb.
Yeah.
I mean, the first paragraph is pretty much there's a world where Jade gives you powers. And the second one is there's a city, there's a family who run a clan, and they're having some trubs. So there we go.
But there's a big thing about honor, and it's got that sort of traditional sort of Eastern, I guess, sort of clans as it is, that real focus. But super interesting setting, context, the way that that my headline for this is not perfect, but the world building is unbelievably good and cool enough to draw me into the rest of the trilogy.
Just as a quick question about the world, what decade in time are you picturing? What's the technology?
That's a really interesting one, because I think it's been quite ambiguous mostly, but then there are moments where I'm thinking like 70s-ish.
Yeah, like initially I was thinking like 1950s, like still got big cars,
Yeah.
and like, you know, the suits are certain kind of like quite angular stuff. But then I kept, you know, because there's no computers, it's all analog. And so I was like, oh, maybe it could be 70s, but it's not quite 80s, because there's no kind of like, there's no big mobile phones. And I know, of course, the technology doesn't have to map completely, but I'm still trying to picture, because there's very much a kind of like 70s, 80s Hong Kong kind of martial arts film.
Yeah.
Or are we talking about something a bit more classical? You know, like post-World War II Japanese reconstruction kind of like vibes.
I feel like maybe a bit later, just because of the sort of opening up of the world, that kind of move towards globalization, the ease with which, you know, Shay has gone and studied elsewhere. And that could just be a bunch of assumptions that I'm jumping to in my head around it, but it feels like the world's a bit more connected than it potentially would have been in the 50s. But I again could be totally wrong with that. I'm just thinking maybe it's kind of that technological move. You've got the shine, the development of technology to
you're right,
replicate the Jade.
Yeah, that feels a bit more modern. And of course, it doesn't have to fit perfectly into any particular decade.
No, of course,
you know, like when you're trying to picture the aesthetic in your head, you know, like it very quickly felt like, okay, the grandparents. So, you know, the torch of Kekon, he was like 1920s, potentially, you know, like that kind of, you know, that kind of era of, you know, more, that was much more kind of black and white in my mind, like properly like early 20th century vibes.
Yeah.
But I really like the fact that it's not kind of fantasy. It's a modern setting, but the world is completely different, but it's recognizable with the modern 20th century. Yeah. And that as a blend was just so inviting to me, because being like, all right, it's knowable and it's understandable, because, you know, it's just got enough touchstones. I mean, like the world felt like it was always just that bit removed from real world analogs. You know, like is Kekon, is it Taiwan? Is it Hong Kong? Is it Japan?
Well, I was going to say it's kind of all three of those, isn't it?
And I think I think Fonda Lee's chosen such a good blend of all of it.
Yeah,
like it fits in whatever kind of vibe.
There's like the cultural part of it is probably more, I thought, Japanese. The geographical and geopolitical thing is around like Taiwan and China.
Yeah, the level of independence, because they've thrown off Shotar.
Yeah.
You know, but then it also could even be inverted, because, you know, it was China who threw off Japanese occupation earlier in the year. It's like, and, you know, like, is it, in the audio, is it Igatan?
Yeah, Igatan, yeah.
Yeah, so like, they're like a Mongolian Russian mix. You know, Shotar's China, and then Espinia is America, and then like
Espinia's Europe.
Oh, I pictured America, because like, you know, Steppenland is like, that gets referenced is like, oh, I feel like that when you hear the Steppen, it's like, oh, that's Scandinavia, so that's a whole separate thing.
Right? I could be wrong there. I think I just did like a sort of Google, you know, what is Espenia supposed to be, and someone had probably put on Reddit or something like that, like Espenia is the Europe, you know, but it could just be the West, like a general kind of Western power, big modern, you know, and doesn't have like a great understanding of the cultural stuff that's going on in a tiny little country like Kekon.
But you know, that's just it. Like we get the sense that there's like, it's all around them, but there's a first book feels quite isolated. Like it's, you know, you had Shay was over in another country, but it's so focused on Janloon as the city, you know, and you know the maps in the book are like, here's Kekon, and there's Janloon central districts. That's all you need to know, like in terms of the world.
Yeah.
So
I did Google a world map, because obviously I've had the audio book. So is there a world map in the book?
There's not one in the first book, no.
Okay.
I had a look ahead because I wanted to know more about the other ones, and there is a world map in the later books.
Yeah, so maybe the one I've seen is from the later novels.
Which says to me that the second book expands the world out a bit more.
I hope so. I mean, that was one of my big takeaways, that I hope we get to see a bit more of this world that she's obviously really, really in-depth thought through and done a really, really good job of making things make sense. And like you say, so it's leaning on the fact that it's recognizable in lots of ways, but also lots of the very specific cultural rules, they're very specific to this, and I don't know whether they're based on things that do exist in, mob type of environments. And
it's interesting that you said like mob, because of course they're referred to in the book as clans, but my instinct was to be like, oh, crime families.
Yeah,
like, it's a mafia, but it's just like the way it's perceived so differently, because of course like the way that like the Yakuza is this kind of like it's a crime syndicate, but also it does this whole thing of supporting communities, and it has that whole vibe. Whereas, if we think about like, the mafia over in America, it doesn't quite have the same vibe. It's more of a kind of protection racket.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that extortion and racketeering and general, it's about the profit. Whereas this is, I mean, the whole setup of it, sometimes when I think about it too much, I kind of have to just stop myself, because I'm like, how is this a thing where these families who are essentially like running organized crime because there's violence, there's power and control, and there's conflict with other clans and all of this stuff. But it's so mainstream. It's so accepted by the royal council and the politicians, and the acceptance of the clans is more important to the politicians than vice versa.
Like they've mentioned a few times the royal council, and I'm just like, is there a monarch? Who's the head of the country? Like it. Because that implies there's a king, right, or an emperor.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we haven't had any.
But then that's a bit like Japan, isn't it? Or like an
emperor type.
Yeah, or the UK, where like they don't really have any power. They just kind of figure it's a general running the day to day, the politics.
It's like a constitutional monarchy.
Yeah.
But this is nothing like a constitutional monarchy that runs with like a standard political process. It's like you can't get any laws passed if these two big clans aren't basically on board with it.
Also, like, you look at it in the world, like we're coming this from a very like Western perspective, and even that we should be we need to question what our perception is of like normal functioning of government, like, because I wouldn't describe how these clans operate as corruption, like, because it's not perceived that within the nation itself. Like, it's not like this is just how their government functions. The power lies in different places. Like the whole jade and gold does not mix. Like, that says that this is almost like an intentional thing for separation of powers. It's just done very differently.
It's a really interesting setup, and I wonder, and we didn't really get much of this, and I hope that maybe we get a little bit more in an interesting way, because I guess it could be super boring to just have like descriptions of how the world works. But like, you've got this, they're almost like self-policing in terms of like the clans running things, and I don't think we got really any mention of like the police within Kekon.
No.
And so I'm like, well, what are the rules and what are the services that that operate within this country? And
are they the police?
Fascinated.
Because like, is there kind of like the thing of like, well, we don't really need police because we are crime, and we also the government. But it's not even. But again, it's calling it crime is so weird, because it's like they run and support. Like, you have lantern men who are the business owners who are supporting the clan.
I guess it's coming back to that honor thing, and it's like honor-based rule system. Everyone accepts that you can have what is it? What's it called? A clean blade or whatever? You know, like a duel type thing where if you win, if you lose, blah blah blah. And it talks about the courts accepting those types of honor-based rules. Like in legal disputes, it's like, well, if you agreed that was, you know, how you were going to settle this dispute, then that's that.
You just have all, like, you know, when you have this kind of like controlled violence, like the burst of anger that Hilo did when he went following Lan's death, goes out and slaughters, there's an element of transgression, but it's still like there's no repercussions for him. It's not like the police go, all right, well, you're responsible for slaughtering 20 odd people, or like when they killed Gaunt Ash out in the street, and it's just like, yep, that was the right thing to do. And I mean, there's a whole societal thing, and like I don't know how much it's kind of like considered the way all societies work, but this idea of peace in the feud, the idea of violence being the ultimate threat because it's what also maintains peace, and you go as much as you can to avoid the idea of the violence happening, but you know, it's almost like this thing that's built in, this threat of the violence existing.
But also, even within the honor-based rules, they have the what's Make Wen? She's not a Greenbone, she's Stone Eye. So, and is it called I Show? Where like you don't, like anyone not wearing Jade, you can't then.
They're not involved in it.
But so it seems like although I don't think it's been specified, my feeling was, I guess it would become a crime when it was outside of like clan on clan violence, and so it's like, but because it's so honor based, it's like, well, obviously we wouldn't sort of be, you know, commit any violent acts or crime against people who can't defend themselves.
So
or
like two guys who just like who aren't Greenbones and just meet in the street. That's when the police gets involved. So they're just like, but then surely they could also have some kind of clean blade system.
That's where, I guess, is it, what's his name? Is it Barrow?
Barrow.
Yeah. That's where I guess he sort of comes in as this, like, there's this underworld of people who are like, they're not necessarily kind of wearing Jade or part of the clans, but they aspire to be, or they want the power, or the
but with the Greenbones kind of being almost like samurai or something like that. Which actually, talking about like, so the Jade itself, I mean, because I'm very aware that we've talked for quite a bit now, and we're just talking about the world itself rather than the story. And it being a fantasy novel, we haven't touched upon the fact that there's a magic system, and it's a very interesting magic system. So like, I text you when I was reading it to say like, I think it's really cool that the Jade magic system is effectively explaining how people have skills in classic wushu films. You know, like, you're amazing with a blade because you've had this martial training, but also you can jump across roofs because you're using lightness. You know, you can do deflection, so you can stop bullets, a bit like in The Matrix.
Stuff,
You know, and it's just like, what a cool mechanical idea for like, you're imbued with it by Jade, and so it just plays into, again, these kind of cultural touchstones that we associate with a setting like this, but just making it fantasy.
And I think you possibly said when you texted me there was a sort of vague like reminder of Mistborn and like Brandon Sanderson and that rule. There's clearly a system, and there are rules around how it works and how you can use it.
And but some of them are more defined than others, though. Like channeling, I'm still not quite sure. It's a healing thing?
Well, there's definitely a healing element that's possible through it, isn't there? Because that's been mentioned several times. But I think I'm interested in whether there is something that we don't know, or something that's going to kind of come out of left field a bit with the way that Andon seems to experience. He seems to be able to like draw on other people's Jade, and I haven't heard anyone else being described in that way, in terms of like just being almost like near it, he could draw on. Is
that what he was doing? That's when he's fighting Gaunt Ash, right? And he got
no, even earlier on, it talks a lot about, you know, he could like when he's with Hilo, and like Hilo comes to see him at the academy, and he's like, oh, I could, you know, could draw it from Hilo into himself.
Yeah,
when they have that little play fight, and
I think that's because he's so his sensitivity to it is so extreme, right? So like he's almost like it's turned up to 11 when everyone comes near him, he can just pick up on it. But you're right,
but is there something special about him as well? Because I mean, I wouldn't think just being a graduate straight out of the academy, the way he kind of, deals with Gaunt Ash, I'm like, surely there's something extra special about him. Like, I don't. Maybe this is just what I want there to be, and I'm just like hoping that it's setting up for something like that. But
for me, it's his power is more dangerous because he's so sensitive to it. He can draw on a higher level of power, like his family, his parents and stuff. But it also means that he's more inclined towards it. So he's just like, he's a glass cannon. Like, you can use him in short bursts, but it might break him completely. Yeah,
there's a sort of risk reward.
Yeah, and how much he sees him as a human being or a resource.
Yeah,
So that's why I reckon it. Because when he made the call to not take the Jade, I completely understood. I was like, I wouldn't want to go mad if I was in his situation. Like,
especially seeing his mum, basically deteriorate and lose,
go mad, pull her skin off, all that kind of stuff. Like, absolutely. And if he found that he enjoyed killing too much, like he goes into this kind of like Nine Fingers style bloodlust. It's like, you want to avoid that because you don't want to become a monster. As much as we as the reader are like, that's really cool. Like, I want to see how powerful he is, and inevitably, right, in one of the two later books, he's gonna
not just gonna disappear now, is he?
Yeah, he's just like, I'm done. But he's gonna put it on and we'll be like, yes, this is what we've been waiting for.
With great power comes great responsibility. We're gonna get our Spider-Man type of,
and he'll reach out and he'll touch some Jade and be like Super Saiyan, like, oh my god, he's gonna go. But whether he'll learn to control it or whether it will be like it breaks him and he's done and that'll be it in like a big finale. We'll have to see. Because I mean, because he also saw Lan deteriorate, and I thought Lan was a really interesting character in the way that his story ended so abruptly.
Yeah, man. Did not see. I mean, it's kind of. It felt like he was set up as the main character up until that point, and obviously we've got lots of perspectives going on. Like, we're getting all of the siblings.
Yeah.
It was largely just those 4 perspectives that we had, plus Barrow, which we'll come on to that a little bit later. But Lan was the main guy in the story, so we were getting to know him, to like him, to kind of see him as this sort of balanced thinker, and like this natural leader type of character. So, like, really interesting decision to just chop him off and be like, we're going to create this vacuum where it comes to leadership, really in that position.
There were so many interesting things with that kind of decision for the plot, because he was also like, I think it was kind of referenced, like, Lan was a peacetime pillar. He was a guy who was like, I'm here to do the business side of it. And while the grandfather kind of respected him, he always like, you're still not your father. You'll never be the kind of man he could have been. And also, he didn't have the ability to go beyond that remit, because he had been raised in peacetime. He wasn't having the experience of his grandfather and his father, where they were fighting to throw Shotarian rule. But when he starts to break down, when the conflict starts to come in, he's like, I need to wear more Jade. And it's like wearing him down, and he can't recover from the injury, because again, it's that indication of like, he's not cut out for this. But as Ait is, she's unleashing these other elements of what it means to be a clan leader, and it's exposing all of his weaknesses. He literally embodies that. He's like, I can't carry the wounds, I can't carry the Jade. I'm just not cut out for this.
Yeah.
But then I when he was being corrupted by the Jade, I think I texted you about it. I was like, I thought it was gonna be this kind of plot line where they're producing corrupted Jade. The stuff they're doing overseas, or they're working some in secret, or the stuff from the mines. It's like, oh, we found a way for it to drain. And so I thought when he killed that guy, they'd put trick Jade on him that he was going to have to take because they knew how the culture worked. And then I was surprised when it was like, no, he just couldn't handle it.
Because like when they went and they had the duel, it felt almost like the people from the Mountain Clan had like sacrificed themselves to it almost a little bit, didn't it? It felt like they were saying, well, we know we're going to die here. And yeah, so I had the exact same thought. I was like, they've poisoned the Jade somehow, and they're literally doing this on purpose to drag him down. And I guess, who knows? Maybe that still could turn out to be the case. It was all along that was the plan. But
then having him, whether it was just intentionally to weaken him, because of course, when he does die, clearly the Mountain weren't intending for that to happen. When Barrow, is Agent of Chaos, gets thrown in there and like hunts him down and doesn't really kill him, but he walks off into the water because he's all messed up. And then Barrow's like, this is mine. And I think it's interesting that Barrow, at the very end of the book, comes back to be like, I want that Jade. Because he's also not adhering to the honor system. He's convinced that he's killed Lamb, but he hasn't.
Yeah.
But he still wants to take it anyway. But it's this kind of like weird mockery of that honor system.
Yeah. I guess it was a bit of a George R.R. Martin, like Game of Thrones type of, kill the main character midway through the book type of act. So then we get Hilo, and like I have to say, I think Hilo's my favourite character. I love his sort of heart on sleeve. He's not a natural leader. He was the perfect man to be the Horn, but he's got this kind of real good nature around him about like the people close to him that really, I think she's written really well. Like he's kind of fiery, but he also has the ability to kind of reflect and and take on board other people's decisions. And I think like in that she sort of built that capacity for him to become a good leader, because he's not just so obsessed with being right all the time. Like he values the input of other people, and
he does, but also like you have moments when like he's trying to get Shay to put her Jade back on, and like dealing with Andon, and like people go against him and he's just kind of like his first instinct is always like anger or whatever, but yeah, I think I hope I think even in this book you see him kind of grow and develop and like exceed expectations in relation to some of the political movements, and like he had to bring Shay in because I think possibly she's the only person that could tell him it like it is, and for him to be like, right, I can't just get rid of her because she's my sister. From the moment Shay arrived, it was inevitable that she was going to put Jade back on. It was never going to be that. Like, I just never had any thought that like, oh, maybe she'll go through the entire book without suiting up. But when she just like gets to the safety deposit box, she's like, yeah, put on my stuff, and then she goes and just like that takes part in that slaughter. It's just like, okay, right. And the fact that she's, it's again those kind of little setups where like Hilo is really well trained. He's super great at being the Horn, but like, the implication is she was a better fighter than him, but she just didn't want to engage with it. And I love that kind of like, I'm reluctantly better than most people, that. I think her and Andon will have that kind of similarity because...
Was she a better fighter though? I think the insinuation was that she was a better all-round student. Like she was top of the class. Yeah. But I think he was naturally...
But certain elements of it... I like the system that, you can have someone who's super small, but their strength, their best ability is strength, or that kind of thing. So you can have people who, it's not necessarily defined by their appearance, and I thought that was really cool that, it just means that it's about your Jade ability rather than your physical attributes. And I like that it transcends, the big guy's the best at strength kind of thing.
Yeah. But I mean, what you just said, it kind of pulls back again to that, the way she set up the clans, that the Weatherman and the Horn, it's not like the Horn is more important than the Weatherman. It's like they're both on equal footing, and in being advisors and serving the pillar. And like it, you know, highlights it's not all just about the physical, the violence, that kind of domination. It's about like how you can strategize your way to being, you know, in the right position, you know,
when they
doing
have the
good
negotiations and stuff.
Yeah.
And you've got Ike just sitting there like waiting for Hilo to lose his cool, because at the moment he does, he's like, yeah, you'll fail because people won't support you anymore.
But it's interesting because I think she's done a lot to set Hilo up as like a natural leader. Like he's someone who has the charisma of a leader, whether he's got like all the strategic skills to follow through, but even, you know, obviously he's born into like the most powerful family in the you know, on the island, so he's got that natural thing. But there's a lot in there about how much loyalty people within the clan, the fists, the fingers have to him. Like he's not someone that people are just going to abandon. So I think like she's done quite a lot to set him up as a different type of leader, and someone that I think could be underestimated, but actually like he, you know, I just think she's done a really good job there of making him interesting. He's got loads of flaws, like you say, and like there's loads of opportunity for the plot to like go in different directions if he makes certain decisions that you'd be like, no, Hilo, you didn't need to chop that guy's head off. You know, and stuff that Shay might be like trying to get him not to do, or you know, or like
he'll be
creates
impulsive.
a load of uncertainty that I think really helps the plot.
But I think, like, you know, all of the central characters, they all are suitably flawed. Like, there's none of them where you're like, oh, they're just perfect. Like, all of them have a reason why they're not like, I'm not even at my full strength kind of situation. Like, you know, because Shay's reluctantly part of this. She's, you know, there's elements of the culture that she doesn't really want to engage with. I think, you know, and she didn't want to be in the family business. So it'll be really interesting to see in the second book that now she's been pulled into it, how she's going to develop and what the kind of plot lines are. Because, you know, I really like the bit where she goes off to the mines to do an investigative accountancy. I was just like, oh, this is a slightly different thing I wasn't expecting. She's like, you know, but it's always that thing of like, I'm doing paperwork, I'm reading paperwork, and eventually if I read enough paperwork, I'll have a kind of like an epiphany about the truth of it. Yeah. And so, you know, you can kind of, it allows that kind of plot device where it's like someone goes to investigate, and of course they've got that perfect reveal for later to undermine that we can't see, because it's just like, you know, like, I'm doing my investigating. Yeah. You know?
I mean, I think because we're sort of firmly on the character conversation, I wanted a bit more from Shay. Like I felt like she started off being very central and then kind of drifted a little bit. And by the end, I didn't feel like her perspective was like majorly important. It was more like when we were with her, we were just following a series of actions that were happening rather than getting, you know, her insights.
See, I felt that was the case for Andon. Like, I felt Andon was really absent for a lot of the book.
And I think the same trajectory as Shay, where it's like it starts off where it's like we're spending time with this person, we're getting to know how he feels about things, what his insecurities are, what his, you know, like motivations are, and then as it went on, it was like less of that in the head stuff, more just like, and then Andon had to do the test at the end of the academy, and he did well, and I think with Hilo, I think it was a bit stronger in terms of staying a bit more in his head and in his, like, what his motivations were.
He's the central character, certainly. Like, I think that's why he's ended up being my favourite, because we learn the most about him. Yeah. And he's there supposed to carry quite a lot of the book after Lan dies.
I mean, I was still sort of compelled, and I think it's that kind of frustration that we still want to know more about. You know, we still want to be in Shay's head and Andon's head and get more of how they're feeling about things, and kind of. I think it's that this is sort of it's a bit on the fence around being character driven or plot driven, and I think it starts off being character driven, and then in the end it becomes very much like a plot focused story. And the plot is like great, super simple, gives loads of space for all the exciting action to happen.
Not just the action, but all the world building. The fact that our first like 20 minutes of this this episode has been talking about the world and how it functions, because it's not necessarily like all exposition world explain, like giving it all to us in big chunks like other recent books. It is.
Although there is some of that. But
yeah, but like it's so much built in. Like it takes ages for any kind of exposition on the different powers, and it's within the academy setting. Like you start seeing the capitalized lightness, perception, like the big. And you're like, oh, these are the skills that Jade provides, and you're just picking it up from context. Like no one sits down and explains to you what a lantern man is. You're just like, right, okay, these are these kind of people. They're the like aligned businesses, and then you find out more about. Oh well, they own more of real estate, and we own more of manufacturing or whatever it is. Like,
yeah.
Okay, cool, right. Like, and it's just like bit by bit, I'm just getting so involved in this world. So you're right, the characters do fall back and back and back because you worry more about the city of Kekon itself. Rather than necessarily, actually thinking about this, like the conversation that happens between Ait and Shay, when she's like, here's my plan, here's what we're going to do, like we need to do this, we need to modernize our fathers, grandfathers, they were all too like stuck in the past, for Kekon we have to be out in the world, we have to be controlling the Jade and the SN1, the Shine, and then she was almost verging on being an antagonist where I was like, she makes a really good point.
And I had quite a few moments where I was like, oh, I wish we had a perspective from I, because I think she would have like a really interesting, because she's obviously ruthless. Like she knows that she can't be, gentle and I think there's a little bit. I think Fonda Lee's doing a little bit of a. Female leaders have to be probably more ruthless than male leaders in these positions type of message there. But she's obvious, because she's come from the weatherman route, she's that strategic thinker that we're assuming that Hilo isn't and won't ever be. So now you've got like these two very different types of leader. Potentially, and I think she's not being positioned. What I really like is she's not being positioned necessarily as like evil. She's just the opposing.
I don't know if I agree with you.
Really, I think she's the way I'm reading it is that if it wasn't her, it would be somebody else doing what she's doing.
But I think it's partly like, I guess not evil, but what she does do is she's like, it's for the order, for the stability of Kekon. It's like, oh, what you mean? Giving a bunch of low-level street crime thugs guns to go and like mess up people's businesses. Like she's doing a bunch of stuff, like like stealing from the jade mines. Like she's doing loads of stuff that is inherently destabilizing of the country, claiming it's for greater order. Like there's a facade there, and like when I didn't entirely agree with Shay's case of like it's about the honor, it's about the traditions, I did agree with the side of it that was like, yeah, but you're not doing it for the good of the country, you're doing it kind of for yourself and power, and this like you can't go around doing this kind of stuff and thinking this is all just for the greater good, because it's kind of BS,
Yeah, I mean, but that's why I kind of want a perspective from her, because it would be interesting. I hope it's not like, I hope it doesn't become this like she's bad, like Mountain Clan bad, enemy, total sort of black and white type of old school fantasy type of approach. But I mean, we could argue like Hilo does the same thing. He goes in and intimidates a bunch of low level thugs and tells them to go and like cause trouble in the Mountain Clan's territories. Shay sends Make Wen to where does she send? Is it Egatania? She sends her to.
She goes off to. She goes off pretending to be a widow, doesn't she? Or like she's got a.
She goes off and like basically turns up at.
Did she go to Uwiwa?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, she goes to the military base.
And sort of negotiates, selling them some. So it's not just them sort of acting acting unethically.
Absolutely. But then they're not the one. They're the ones who are like, like some of that's in response to what Ait is doing, because she's just sitting around those thugs, so he's going to respond because she crossed a line, and that's just it. Like, she's moving the norms of what proper order is, and she's saying she's doing it for the sake of modernization, but actually she's doing it to destabilize so that she can seize power, and that's not good for institutions or that stuff. So as much as when I read these books where they talk about oh, it's what we've always done, and you're disrespecting Jade, I'm not always sold on those kinds of ideas. No, an element of modernization, revision, because otherwise, if if you're static, then you're atrophying. So I just feel like what Fonda Lee has done is made a good case where both sides aren't entirely right and they're not entirely wrong. But so when I listen to I have that whole monologue at Shay, I was like, yeah, I see you, but I can also see where we've got the arguments against you, and I think that is a case of good writing. Yeah. Which brings on to what you text me about, which is that you don't think this book is written well.
Not that it's written poorly, though. I think it's, what did I say? I used the phrase rough around the edges.
Yeah.
There are some information dumps throughout that they're not terrible, but that they kind of break the flow a little bit of.
Yeah.
We go from perspective of whoever we're with to all of a sudden we're out of that perspective and we're just having the history of some other island or something else, or the mines or the torch of Kekon and what happened previously kind of explained to us. There are occasional bits where, so this isn't told predominantly as a retrospective, but occasionally it goes, and Andon would come to regret this decision, or something like. It's got a few of those little bits where it's all of a sudden we're being told, a retrospective
I'm so bad
story.
at noticing that stuff. You always pick up on those things. I never notice when they shift that stuff.
And it doesn't ruin anything. It's such a good world and such a good plot that I'll forgive all of it. And just, I think we occasionally just had a couple of random perspectives, which, as you know, it drives me mad.
We had Ben, right? So who else do we have?
I think we had one of the who's the Royal Council member guy who they spoke to.
Son.
Yeah, I think we had him for a few pages, and then it kind of just changed back to Hilo. Again, it was minor. I didn't really think the whole Barrow thing worked that well. I get having him as this, like you say, the sort of agent of chaos, the destabilizing factor, but we just didn't get enough of him, and I found it a little bit annoying when we had probably 3, 4, maybe max 5 chapters of him out of 60 plus chapters, and I like the concept, but it's this thing, where you get annoyed with about the story not being wrapped up in book one, and I realised after 20 chapters, when we'd had basically the first chapter from Barrow's perspective, I was like, this is going to be one of those things where it's it's setting up something for book 3, because we're not getting anything out of this, and I get doing that, write it as a trilogy. I'm more relaxed about that than you are usually, but I wanted a bit more of it to give me some momentum with him as a character.
So I agree with that. He wasn't in it enough, considering how important they make us feel he's going to be. Because initially there's this element of he's going to be the guy who gets into the clan and he gives us the outsider's perspective of learning all about it. But then you're like, oh no, so what he is he's the people who exist outside, the people who want the Jade, and the people who are being used by the clans to give us that really low level perspective within the city. And then it becomes, again, this almost thing where, at the very end, where he's like, this is my Jade, I need to get it back, I've got access to this massive cache of SN1, so I can do what I want. It's like, all right, well, let's see where this goes. And it has no bearing on the end of the book. So he's just there to be this kind of thing that bounces around, is involved in Lan's death, and then vanishes off again. So, what is going to happen? Is he always going to be this low-level guy? Is he going to end up like, we jump forward at a certain amount of time and he's setting up his own clan, this new kind of like modern version.
End of book 3, Barrow is going to be the pillar of the whole of Kekon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so yeah, I agree. Like, I felt like if we took book 1 as its own, his storyline is quite unsatisfying because I felt there should be something that circles back to him purely because of Lan's death. Like, just even if it's just like he's not killed, but someone's got an eye on him, but like no one even knows who he is by the end of the, like, they're just like, we'll go and search for him, boss. It's like, well, go find him then. Like, if you're having the interrogation scene of like Mud or whatever his name was, like, have it so that we know that you're on the right track, or there's a glimpse of him being like, oh, I thought I saw who he was, but he escaped because he's a wily little bugger, or just realizing it was him again. It's just something,
because Hilo would recognize him from that first chapter, wouldn't he? Or potentially, if he's got a good memory. But yeah, I mean, it's but none of this spoiled it for me, and I did wonder how you would feel about the kind of the general feel of how wrapped up it was, because it didn't feel in any way at all wrapped up to me. This was like, this is basically one book that we're reading across three
but like
books.
The war is dealt with. Like, at least the major plot points are the truce was reached, that you had the whole discovery of what the Mountain were planning to do with SN1 and the secret Jade, and that had a culmination in that I had to backtrack. She lost a bunch of territory, like things were swayed in favor of No Peak Clan. And so I felt like at the end of it, it's like, this is a good resting point for the story. So it definitely felt like we're not done here, but it felt like it was enough within this story arc that it felt satisfactory. Like, if I didn't read any more, I've seen how a clan war can break out in Kekon. Knowing that there's, but the future's coming and it's inevitable. That's kind of enough. It's not like there was still loads and loads of stuff to deal with around that. If the war was just kicking up to another notch at the end of this book, I'd be like, no. But, what I'd anticipate is the next stage of the war starts in the next book, right? Because it's called Jade War, I'm assuming. So I'm guessing
we're just jumping to some conclusions.
Yeah,
that could mean anything, Sam.
Who knows what I mean? But do you know what I mean? Like, it's just that. It's like, there's no conflict ongoing. It's been reduced to a sort of status quo, but enough has changed to feel like the plot has moved on.
Yeah.
So it's not just a big circle.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we haven't really discussed like Doru and like his role, but there's a ton of side characters really that serve a purpose.
Yeah, I feel like, with the Make brothers, like, they were another pair of characters where like we needed more. The Doru stuff, I don't know, like, it all just felt like there was, again, it's that function of the plot rather than the characters. Like, these characters are there to drive. That's the reason why Shay doesn't like him, wants him out, and why he eventually betrays them. I think the Make brothers will hopefully get some more airing because they seem like quite important people, but I didn't really get to know them. Like, I don't think I could call off the top of my head whether Tar is the more aggressive one or which. For me, I want to learn more about the Abakai. The fact that you've got this system where the people who were indigenous to the island before the Kekonese came along are completely immune to any of the effects of Jade. But somehow they're reduced to a subclass. And then
they just work in the mines.
Yeah, and
because
just like,
they can't be.
Yeah, like, surely they would have some kind of privileged priest-like status because they can handle Jade and have no effect. Because as much as Jade is a boon and gives you all these powers, it also can mess you up. So I think there's got to be something that comes back about that, because otherwise it's overseeing like. It's a kind of like, like in terms of like, again, parallels, the Ainu in Japan, this idea that you had this force who come along and they've made Kekon their home, even though their reaction to Jade is because they aren't indigenous. They've just been there longer than most other people. And they say like almost like the Kekon blood makes you special, and this kind of like privileging them, no one else should have it. All of that stuff I think needs to be overturned and challenged in the next two books, because too much of that is still supporting, and like, we're supposed to support the Call family, whereas really I think all of that needs to be upended. And Ike doesn't necessarily have to be the one who does it, or Barrow, but there needs to be some realization that the way that they currently do things is really bigoted. Like for outsiders and people who can't use Jade, like there's so many silenced areas of population in this novel, and if we get to the end of the trilogy and loads of them, they're still like, no, it's right that the calls are on top and it's all about your use of Jade and everyone else is sub us. It's like, okay, right, well, no one's really learned a lesson then, have they?
Yeah.
My final thought on it is, just as a random one, is cars. Stop telling me the names of cars. They're fantasy cars, and I have no idea what they look like. Like it's like, oh, when they're bringing the Zaprezi LS9, I'm just like, so that's nonsense words. Like, what does it mean to tell me?
I didn't even notice that.
Always mention the car's make and model for fantasy cars that we have no idea what they look like.
Wow.
Like, it's such a weird thing to keep putting.
Maybe
in the
she's
book.
designed all of them.
Great, show me them. Put some pictures in so I can see what these awesome cars look like.
Yeah. So no, I think good point. Like, would be nice to find out more about that. As I think we've sort of touched on things I'm hoping for. Would love to see the wider world.
Yeah.
In book 2 in Jade War. Like I said, nerdy details about like the police and how like those interactions with like what we would think of as traditional services that people would rely on outside of a clan-based system, what the function of crime and punishment and law and order is.
I want to learn more about the other clans.
Yeah.
Like the smaller ones, or like just someone else who's super powerful with Jade who isn't a Call or an Ite. Or something like that, or isn't aligned to the two clans. An external person who's like an absolute badass, and everyone respects them because they're Jade power, but they're not aligned with Mountain or No Peak. Yeah.
Want to see a bit more of Andon, I think, or a lot more of Andon. I think I'm really, really interested. I think I want to get more time with Shay.
Yeah.
I think she could be a really great character, but she needs to be given a little bit more.
So therefore, by extension, a bit less Hilo. He's had
maybe, but like, I mean, I'm still really enjoying him. I think it's, again, like you get the writing right. You've probably got, I mean, and Jade War is not a small book. Like it's a bigger book than Jade City. So, and we won't have any of Lan. so there'll be space if you wanted to have more of that. But yeah, excited for book 2. My overall conclusion, not perfect, but really, really enjoyable. Great world.
Great world. Love it.
Yeah.
I want to read more purely because it's such an interesting world. Yeah.
Yeah. So we hope that you have enjoyed this episode and enjoyed Jade City like we did, but we would love to hear what you thought of it. Do you agree? Do you love the world building? Have you got criticisms? What do you think of the characters, the writing? Yeah, we want to hear your thoughts. So get in touch. If you're with us on YouTube, you can leave a comment down below. Make sure you like and subscribe while you're here. If you want to just get in touch with us on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, @Escapists Anonymous Pod. Leave us a comment, send us a message. We want to hear your thoughts. And in the next episode, as Sam said, we're going to be covering Jade War, Book 2 in the Greenbone Saga. So excited to see where we end up at the end of that one, heading into book 3. Thanks for listening, watching, wherever you're doing so. And we really appreciate you spending the time with us. And all that's left to say is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.